In Sidney Lumet's incisive 1976 satire film Network, we are introduced to Howard Beale, a depressed alcoholic newsman facing cancellation. In his unhinged desperation, Beale transforms his nightly broadcast into a pulpit from which he delivers the eruptive sermons that have become the film's most iconic image. The network itself, having recently exposed its news division to the invisible hand of the free market, finds itself in a dilemma. Beale is violating the norms of conventional broadcasting, but the audience can't get enough of it. Eventually, the higher-ups at Beale's channel allow the ratings to make their mind up for them, and the frenzied Jeremiads continue to be beamed across the nation. However, in the film, both textually and subtextually, there is another phenomenon driving the change in direction aside from ratings, revenue, and audience popularity. The scenario that fosters Beale's televised breakdown is also driven by a sort of countercultural hangover and a zombified impetus to rebel vapidly from within the confines of the mainstream. The counterculture of the 1960s would become disillusioned, neutered, and commercialized by the 1970s, and this transformation defines the media landscape satirized in Network. The rebellious experimentation of the 1960s, now defanged, is one of the driving forces that steers Beale's new trajectory. This exhausted counterculturalism is personified by Faye Dunaway's character, Diana. At the start of the film, Howard Beale himself often sounds like a hippie.
What I think the Hindus call prana.
However, he too becomes co-opted and sapped of his zeal. Even before this, it is ambiguous whether or not his transformation is a genuine response to the thinly veiled corruption of the system, or madness feigned in order to boost ratings, in the mode of a certain Danish prince. It is, however, unambiguous in Howard Beale's story that something is rotten in the state of Denmark. In conjunction with the money men, Diana introduces a cynical, media-saturated and toothless form of counterculturalism into the calculations of the network.
Hi, I'm Diana Christensen, a racist lackey of the imperialist ruling circles.
This combination demolishes the stifling decency of the previous generation, and Beale's prophetic broadcasts eventually become a sort of circus, a circus that evolves to become as meaningless and garish as that which came before. The story of Network is a microcosm of neoliberalism.
It is the international system of currency which determines the totality of life on this planet.
The avaricious squares on the board of directors and the grown-up hippies of the 1970s working together would hold nothing sacred. One result of this superficial process of letting it all hang out would be a trend that would come to be known as the Jerry Springerization of media, that Network seems to predict rather insightfully. Let's have a look at a handful of moments in Network that introduce the neoliberal marriage of counterculturalism and capitalism into the subtext of the film. In one scene, Diana, Faye Dunaway's character, in her role as head of programming, is in her office listening to a series of cliched loglines for potential new shows. One of these new shows that is being pitched to the channel is called Amazon Squad. After hearing the title, Diana is able to correctly predict that the show is about a feminist police officer. The themes of Amazon Squad relate to Network's theme of the co-opted counterculture movement. Amazon Squad depicts a feminist becoming a policewoman, and so the show encapsulates the concept of radicalism being reformulated to serve the establishment, embodied by the police. The next subtextual element that thematically introduces the marriage of capitalism and counterculture into the film is the character Sybil the Soothsayer, whom Diana adds to her programming schedule.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Network News Hour with Sybil the Soothsayer.
Sybil is a medium who uses her psychic powers to predict fluctuations in the stock market. The unlikely pairing of New Age supernaturalism on the one hand and high finance on the other that Sybil the Soothsayer represents is indicative of the theme of countercultural co-optation by the capitalist system that is explored in Network. Finally, the theme of the co-optation of radicalism that Network explores is reinforced by the De Palma-esque B-plot that involves Diana launching her own program called the Mao Zedong Hour. This program involves televising acts of political violence committed by a radical revolutionary organisation called the Ecumenical Liberation Army, or ELA. In the process of converting Diana's initiative into a viable commercial product, the ELA becomes more concerned with the humdrum aspects of television production, such as ratings, sub-licensing, and distribution costs.
Don't fuck with my distribution costs!
And less concerned with revolutionary organisation. The introduction of corporate television managers into the radical group's action committee is the most visually stark indication that the co-optation of radicalism, plus the role of media in this process, is being directly satirised in the 1976 film Network, directed by Sidney Lumet and written by Paddy Chayefsky.